Hey guys, how you doing? I put up a talk a few weeks ago where I actually mentioned about making in a whole bunch of different contexts. And one of the contexts I talked about was actually using cooking as a form of making an expression. So a few people have sent me some messages. They were really curious as to what I make. And I thought, well, make in the kitchen really, because I make a whole lot of things. But I thought, this is a great opportunity. Why don't I bring you guys in and show you one of my favorite recipes to make, which may be a little bit different from what you expect, because today I'm going to show you a real quick and easy way to make cheese. So this is going to be a little different than what I usually do. We're in my kitchen here. It's really simple. I'm going to try and talk you through this as we go along. But basically what I've got is a few items here. Some fresh milk, as you can see there, and some white vinegar. We use the vinegar to actually activate the proteins in the milk that actually split the curd from the whey. I'm going to show you that. I've got a container here just to measure some out, and I've just got a few other things like a spoon to stir. This is a colander. As you can see here, it's just a plastic colander, and on top of it I've got some cheesecloth. That's probably the one thing that most people don't have in their kitchens. I found this in a really cheap shop. It was about $2.50. If you can get a handle on this, you can use that. It makes the process go a lot faster. So basically what we've got here is just a pot. It's a metal pot. As you can see here, I'm going to actually turn this on. Wow, I did it the first time. And I'm actually going to stick some milk in there. I'm actually going to turn that down a little bit because we don't want to burn the steel. I just found that out. And what we've got here is just a container. Now let's open it. It's really interesting doing this with one hand. Some milk. And I'm going to look at just using a liter so we can actually do this very quickly. It should take less than 10 minutes to actually make some cheese, which I enjoy. I'm using Australian light farmer's milk. And there's a mark on this, which is 1 liter, which is right there. So let's put that in there. Like everything, I like to go by the instructions. So we've got a liter's worth of milk. And I think you'll be surprised at how much cheese comes out of this. When I look at those big blocks you get at the market, especially when it comes to government cheese and things like that, you put the milk in there, I was really surprised as to how much milk is actually used in that. So all we're doing right now is we're actually just going to heat up the milk. The idea is that this is a chemical reaction, and as you know, the more heat gets the reaction to happen a lot quicker, a lot faster. But we don't want to heat it up to the point where we can't touch it. So you'll see I'll be checking this as we go along. I like to stir it around so it doesn't burn. It's kind of really neat. To see what's going on. So we'll let that go. Sometimes I just touch the milk here or the side, and you can feel as to how hot it's getting quickly. So one of the really interesting things about this process is that we're using vinegar to actually separate the proteins. The idea here is that the acid in the vinegar actually can make the proteins bind, and that's actually what brings us the whey that creates cheese. I found this really interesting. Especially if you're vegan or if you're a vegetarian, some people don't like eating cheese because the rennet that they actually use in mainstream cheese comes from animals. So, this is an interesting alternative. It's used a lot in India. This is where I actually learnt about this. A lot of Indians over there will actually take goat's milk and actually make a very soft cheese. And you'll see this at the end of it. It doesn't really become as hard as the cheddar, but it's definitely something that's palatable, and actually more than palatable, and it's actually something really kind of cool to start a conversation with. So we'll get back to actually making that process and separating that right now. So let's see what's going to happen. Okay, so we've been heating the milk. It's actually at a point where it's warm, but I can still touch it. I'll actually show you that. It's warm enough so that I can actually still manipulate. I'm just going to turn that heat off now, and here comes the fun part. I'm going to take some of our white vinegar. So it's just standard white vinegar that people sometimes use for different things. I'm just going to pour it in there, and if you see what happens, you should see in front of our eyes, you can see it's kind of curdling a little bit, and let's see what happens. I don't want to put too much vinegar in it because it does taste very salty otherwise. You can see if I actually start moving this around, you can see the formation of some of that separation of curd and whey. So you can actually see on the label itself, and you can see the water actually separate. That liquid is whey, and you can see the curd. That's actually happening really quickly, so that's really nice. Really nice. We'll just leave it there for a few minutes. And actually, I think this is going to actually happen literally before our eyes, which is kind of nice. Really nice. You can see, you can see it's actually thickening up as we go along. And those proteins right now, what's happening is those proteins are binding to each other. A little bit like, it kind of sounds a little weird, but the same way our muscles, if we damage them, they thicken up. This is exactly what's going on. This is the same reaction that actually happens in our body. When we hurt ourselves, we have an interesting response that actually forms this idea. And we're seeing it now only in food. So I'm going to cover that up and give it a few minutes, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you the final part on making this cheese. Just been a few minutes. It's actually, you know, maybe I just left it for a minute. You can actually see in there, you can see exactly what's going on. So this is the way I find the easiest way to separate it. I take my colander here and I put some cheesecloth. I just push that in there like that. I just put that into the sink here. If you happen to work out something to do with the actual whey, please let me know. It's not something that I've tried eating it. It's not the nicest tasting stuff, but if you've got a recipe or something like that, let me know. And I just basically take the other stuff here and I just pour it in, and you'll see with the cheesecloth it'll actually trap all of that. So you can see here in the actual cheesecloth, bring that up, we'll see there's quite a bit of liquid still in here. Just move that so we can bring it down. It's quite warm. I mean, will it burn me? It's actually a little bit too hot at this time. But the idea is that the more liquid you can get out of the cheese, the harder it'll actually set. So that's actually quite warm. So I left it a little bit warmer than I should have. But that's not a problem. What we'll do is we'll sit that, just remove as much as we can. And now that's, palm of my hand is actually a liter of milk. So that's the protein in a liter of milk. So you can imagine when you see those big sliced cheese blocks, how much milk is actually in that process. But that actually took us less than about, I'd say about 5 or 6 minutes. Open that up there, you can actually see how stringy and gooey it is. So we'll actually just like let that actually what we'll do is we'll just squeeze out a little bit more. It's a little gooey because I've actually made it a little bit too hot. There you go. And what we'll actually do is, this is what I do, I just leave it tied up like that, and then let it cool down. Let's see, hang on. Alright. So this stuff is so hot that I can actually pull it right off and start forming it. It's a little bit like a mozzarella right now, which is interesting. I like to try and grab as much. Normally it doesn't stick to the cheesecloth at all. I've actually made it a little bit too hot in my eagerness to share this recipe with you. But you know what? There's no such thing as failing. It's all about learning, and I hope that you learn from my mistakes as well as trying something new. So you can see here, I have a little ball of cheese that I can start forming. This stuff is great on pizzas, by the way. Save yourself some money with buying it from the store and make it just out of some milk. If you happen to have a cow, something that I'd love to see in the future for myself. If I take this bowl, I can actually put it in there and let it sit there. Okay, so here's the cheese we just made. It's just cooling down in this container. That's about a liter of cheese, a liter of milk. And this is a cheese that I made a little bit earlier. I made this early this week. I want to just show you the texture of it. This was actually 3 liters of cheese. I have a knife here. I just want to cut a small piece off. You can see it's actually quite hard. It is a soft cheese, but it is quite hard. It actually tastes really good, and you can see that when I'm crumbling it, it's not exactly like ricotta or anything like that. It's not like a cottage cheese, but it does have some body in it. This cheese, I put some salt and a thing called liquid smoke just to give it some flavor. As this cheese actually will cool off, it should take the same texture as this one. It all depends on actually how much water we were able to squeeze out. So if you like your cheese a little harder and to have this sort of kind of consistency, just remove as much water as possible. If you like it a little bit more creamy or ricotta-y, just leave it like this and pull out as much water as you can. I can actually see there's still a lot of water in there. So that's it. Cheese made in under 10 minutes. It's definitely a make a dream. If you like your cheeses and you want to start exploring stuff without having to spend money on rennet, or you're vegetarian, you can't, grab some vinegar, some milk, put it on your stove and see what's going to happen.